Welcome back, everyone. I feel like it's been a really difficult few weeks. I feel like maybe I haven't made a video in the past couple weeks because I've just been like in another place, listening to some music, but also just sort of obsessed with what's going on in the United States. And it's really hit hard that so much of what is wrong with the US right now is happening in a city that I absolutely love, which is Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's sort of my adopted town. I wasn't born in Minneapolis. I was born in Wisconsin. A lot of my growing up was in Kansas City, and it wasn't Minneapolis, but Minneapolis was my chosen city. When I was halfway through college and wanting something different, wanting to see live shows, obsessed with Prince, obsessed with the Replacements, I transferred to the University of Minnesota. I thought that the streets would be, I don't know, purple. I call it like the Purple City, and I'd see Prince and the Replacements, and all that stuff would just be like at my fingertips, that energy. And I was right, honestly. I mean, I didn't see the Replacements. I saw Westerberg. I did see Prince. But I found a home, and I lived there for a combined, I think, 18 years. About 7 years when I moved there initially. Then I moved to Madison, Wisconsin for a couple of years. Moved right back 2 years later. And then I lived there for another 11 years until I moved to the West Coast, starting with San Francisco in 2013. So a lot of what made me who I am right now was formed in Minneapolis, honestly. Going to see shows, meeting like-minded people, feeling like I belong there, feeling a sense of community. And I think that is what certain people are threatened by, maybe, because it is an example, like I said, of great community. I mean, community that comes together for different things, for music especially. I mean, it's like a music city. There would be festivals in the street that the city would put on, block parties and things like that, and they get Prince to play. I mean, there's 10,000 local bands. There's a very, very good music and art scene and theater scene in Minneapolis, and I think in some ways that threatens our current administration. I think that in some ways they see it as the opposite of what they are, and they hate it for that. That's the only thing that I can wrap my head around, because I don't know why in the world you would go after Minneapolis, of all cities. I mean, I get it. I mean, truthfully, look who the vice presidential candidate was that went, against a couple of years ago. I mean, okay, there we have it. That's probably part of the reason. And I don't care if I get political. Just stop watching if that bothers you. I'll be back to regular scheduled programming soon enough. But I think it's just really sad to have, and scary, and not right at all to have an armed occupation, essentially, of Minneapolis, to be sending in federal troops. It's just the footage I see, the friends I talk to who live there, these are just people like you and me that just, this shit's going on right in the front yard, and it's impossible to ignore. All kinds of rights are being violated. There's people just standing up for what is right. And that is one thing I've always loved about that community. They say that Minneapolis is the hardest city to recruit people to, like if for jobs and all that, but it's the hardest city to get somebody to leave once they get there. And I tried for 18 years in some ways, because I never really liked the winter. And I mean, I didn't try initially. I loved it. And I always loved it. But eventually I did want to, I mean, a lot of it was work. I got a job in San Francisco, and I moved because of that. But part of it was the cold, and part of it was just like wanting to see, I don't know, mountains and oceans and things like that, and try something different. But there's been so many times where I've looked back and lived in other cities and looked back at Minneapolis and gone, man, I did not know what I had, until I left. And sticking up for it, people, the Midwest or whatever, some attitude about how the Midwest isn't hip or cool. And I'm like, Minneapolis is way cooler than you, dude. Mr. San Francisco or Seattle or, I don't know, I was gonna say Las Vegas. That's ridiculous. I lived in all three of those places. Anyway, I thought I would make a video today just talking about some of the bands. These are more major bands, like bands you've heard of, and just their impact on me, having been able to see them in regular kind of environments or club shows, or see them as they're touring or playing shows. I shouldn't say touring. They're playing shows that maybe aren't, on a national tour, or if they are, it's a special hometown kind of show. And in some cases, bands I just got to see a lot of, or got to see a lot of their members just out and about at other shows, because that was a big thing too. The community supports the community. I'm going to be part of a live show that, a live stream, I think, with Mazzy on Saturday night. And we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff too. I'll have different records I pick out and talk about different things. But today I just wanted to talk about these 5 records. Maybe I try to pick records I wouldn't normally pick by these artists. And just talk about him. So get started here. So I already mentioned him. Let's talk about Prince. For me, Prince was, like I said, I thought Minneapolis would be like the purple city, and I used to dub it that. I don't know if anybody else did, but I used to think of it as a purple city before I moved there, and I just kind of like to refer to it once in a while as the purple city. This might be my favorite Prince record. It's kind of the one when I was a kid that came out where I just totally fell for it. Totally got into it. I mean, Purple Rain, definitely. Initially, I wasn't, I was kind of young. I didn't initially get it right away. It had been out for a little while. And then I started to understand it, listened to it, and was blown away by how good it was. I mean, once I listened to the record and got away from the singles, absolutely loved it. Around the World in a Day, I remember loving the singles, like Raspberry Beret, and just loving how different it was. And that carried through to this. I mean, the advanced single off this was Kiss. And it's just like this kind of, Kiss sounds nothing like Around the World in a Day, or Pop Life, or Raspberry Beret, or anything off Purple Rain, or 1999. He's constantly changing his style. I love kind of the loose kind of funk stuff that's on here too, like New Position or Boys and Girls. It's got a very, very sad song called Sometimes It Snows in April, which really hit hard. And I know a lot of people commented on it when Prince died, because he did die in April. And that song just took on a whole lot of new meaning. It was already one of my favorites off the record, or really, I'd list it as top favorite Prince songs, really. But why do I bring this up? Why do I bring up Prince? Because Prince was very, very proud of Minneapolis. And he sort of claimed Minneapolis as his home for almost his entire life. I think he lived in LA for a few years. He might have had a second house there, but he never forgot Minneapolis. He mentioned it all the time. A lot of his musicians, almost all of his musicians, came from Minneapolis. And he would play Minneapolis. I mean, I got to see him at Paisley Park. It wasn't unusual, like the summer of 96, 97, some summers before there, probably before I came to Minneapolis. He would do shows at Paisley Park, and you kind of hear about him on the radio. You just go down there and wait in line. Usually you'd be waiting a long time, and the security is really tight too. He'd end up playing at like 4 a.m. You've been waiting in line forever, but it was so good. It was just like so special and unique that it was all worth it. And he played some block parties the city would put on. I saw at least one where he headlined it, and I think it was 1999, and he played 1999 for the last time. I actually saw him just in the wild a couple times, like at First Avenue behind the, like in the DJ booth area. But yeah, what an honor to have him from Minneapolis and to be so proud of the city for good reason. Prince. Next up, not from Minneapolis, but plays Minneapolis a lot, or still, well, they used to. And I used to work for the record label, and so I've seen them a lot of times. I've seen them change a lot over the years, and it's Low. I'm choosing this record. This is kind of a unique cover, 1s and 6s. It's different than what you'd see if you just probably pulled it up on online anywhere. This is probably the cover you're more familiar with, but this is sort of their first foray into sort of the electronica that they would do, like electronica samples or distortion, that sort of thing that they started to do with BJ Burton. And they did for 3 albums in a row, including their last one. But this is sort of the beginning of it all, and I really like this record, and I feel like it's really underrated. I got into it quite a bit when I lived in Las Vegas, and I really wanted to be back in Minneapolis and see them on this tour, and I wasn't able to do that. But yeah, Low used to play Minneapolis a lot, and if you live there, if you're from there, if you went out and saw them, you were very lucky. They played there probably more than anywhere else, had a lot of homecoming shows, and Alan Sparhawk is very active to this day and plays, from what I've heard, a lot of unique Minneapolis shows. So yeah, Low. This album is called Ones and Sixes. If you're looking for a song just to kind of sample off this, for me it would be No Comprende. But there's so many good songs in here. In fact, I think I'm going to Kid in the Corner. I think I'm going to play this, keep this out so I play it soon. It's been a while. Next up, this is a band that I really liked 2 of their albums in the late 80s and very early 90s, which is Hang Time and The Horse They Rode In On. I'm talking about Soul Asylum. I also really liked, at least initially, Gold Dancers Union, the one that really put them on the map. Pulled off this record is the only one I have on vinyl, and the cover is just great. It's Soul Asylum, Clam Dip, and Other Delights, kind of poking fun at the why am I forgetting that? Herb Albert, I think. Clam Dips. And see, I get them confused now. Anyway, I'll put a picture of the other one in here. But they were a band that they were just so good live. Just the way that Dave Pirner would move and kind of creep towards you, and they just rocked. I mean, really, really exceptionally good live. And was really glad I got to see them back when they still had Dan Murphy in the band and Carl Mueller was still around. Yeah, really cool live, and definitely a band that owned Minneapolis and was very proud to be from there. Next up, we have the Jayhawks. I'm showing this record. This is called Sound of Lies. It's from 1997. This was a record that I didn't think was going to happen. I was a fan of the Jayhawks, came on with Tomorrow the Green Grass, and then got into Hollywood Town Hall. Had seen them open up for Johnny Cash with Mark Olson still in the band. And then I remember hearing that they were going to break up or they were going to come back and have a different name. And then all of a sudden, this album shows up, and it's got this crazy album cover that looks nothing like what you would expect from the Jayhawks. I bring it up. It's not an album I've listened to much at all in the last 30 years. I'm kind of intrigued to. But it always comes up for me in my memories because I saw them play so many times around this album. Cedar Fest, which is an annual festival for a long time on the West Bank. I have very fond memories of seeing them play there. I think I saw them at least once, one other time on that tour. And I would see Gary Loris, I swear I'd see him as often as friends at shows. I mean, I never approached him. Everybody would just kind of leave him alone. But he was very active in going out and seeing other bands. So part of the reason I bring up the Jayhawks, but exceptionally good band. Even without Mark Olson. I mean, the early stuff, but there's plenty of good later records like Rainy Day Music that are exceptional. And this one's pretty good too. I keep meaning to check it out again, like I said. The last one I want to bring up, of course, if you watch my channel, you know I'm a huge fan of The Replacements. The Replacements had broken up by the time I moved to Minneapolis in 1993. I remember going up there. I was living in Wisconsin. I remember going up there and visiting, and I had not known in advance that Paul Westerberg was playing First Avenue, legendary club in downtown Minneapolis, featured on Purple Rain. The coolest place to see a show. There's very few other places I'd rather see like a good rock show than First Avenue. And I'm like going to Minneapolis to basically to check it out. I think I was just checking it out. It was before I went back and actually picked out an apartment and all that. But it was like my first time to just kind of check it out. And I was with a friend. And Paul Westerberg was playing First Avenue. And I couldn't believe it. I read it, I think, in the local City Pages, kind of weekly publication, arts and music publication. And I went down there and we stood outside, and if I hadn't been with him, I probably would have I don't know, stood outside for an hour and a half. I mean, you couldn't hear that well at all, but I just wanted to be close. I just wanted to hear anything. I was just obsessed with the Replacements and really got into the 14 Songs record at the time, which is what he was touring behind. So I've always been a huge Paul Westerberg fan. Paul Westerberg was not, and Replacements, of course. Paul Westerberg was not the type that would play around town, but the ghost of the Replacements totally lingered. And anytime Paul did anything, it was super exciting and people would talk about it. Paul Westerberg vinyl has sort of been missing. I mean, some of these records came out initially, but a lot of them are really hard to find and they're due for reissues. Rhino just did all these Replacements records in deluxe editions, box sets, and I think they own the rights to most of Paul Westerberg's catalog. So it'd be interesting if they release those. I think they're overdue to be released, and there's some really good records in there. But I was completely surprised right at the end of the year when I'm on like Instagram and I see a little ad for another one of Paul Westerberg's records. This is other than the Grandpa Boy and Stereo Mono and Folker and Come Feel Me Tremble. This is the only record of his that's not on Reprise. And it was on Capitol, and it came out on vinyl. Paul Westerberg's Suicaine Gratification. Suicaine Gratification? Gratifaction. I don't know what it means, but it kind of makes sense in Paul Westerberg's world, and I don't need to totally know. And in fact, he kind of said those same words when somebody asked him what it meant when this album came out. I got this on a CD initially, like the day it came out. I liked it a lot. I feel like it's one of his better works. It's very piano-driven. Parts of it recorded at home. Don was the producer on this. And Don Was had listened to or played 14 songs constantly when he was working on the Rolling Stones' Voodoo Lounge. So he jumped on the opportunity to play with Westerberg and record this. But he really let Westerberg kind of do his own thing, which I don't think you get Westerberg if you don't do that. But he recorded a lot of stuff at home, some of the stuff in the studio. It's kind of raw. It's very, some would say depressing. It's a very serious record. I think it's his most adult record. And other than like the singles or certain songs on it, like Looking Out Forever, I think is one of the best singles Paul Westerberg has ever done. I'm surprised it wasn't a huge hit, but then if you know the story, it's kind of understandable why it wasn't. Great record. Why did it not get more popular? Well, Gary Gershwin, I think his name, Gershwin, the head of Capitol Records at the time, was all behind this record, but then there was a shakeup and he left and the new guys didn't care. I mean, that's kind of what happened. Born for Me is a song he did with Sean Colvin, and that could have been like a hit, maybe? I don't know. It was really interesting listening to this all these years later because it's a very adult record, and I'm way more of an adult now than I was in 1999. And I found that rather than just the singles or certain songs like It's a Wonderful Lie or Best Thing That Never Happened or Looking Out Forever, that I would sort of, especially the latter two, play once in a while. Those songs always seem to jump out at me. The whole thing sounded much more cohesive. And even songs like Bookmark that I was only kind of so-so on before, I really, really liked. Self-Defense seemed to take on a new meaning. So it's really cool to have this on vinyl. I think it's a pretty good pressing. It's very faithfully done. It's an embossed cover here. And on the backside too. These little pictures are kind of feel like they're stapled on. And the record sounds really good. So really happy to have this and hope that more Paul Westerberg music comes out. But what a treat to have lived in the same city as Paul Westerberg and knew all this. I mean, he never left either. He was Minneapolis to the core. And to feel part of these records when they came out and part of the community that really supported him, even if he sometimes got tired of the crazy fans. So that's where I'm at right now, just picking 5 records from Minneapolis artists that people know. I'm going to get a little bit more obscure, just talk about some different records when I'm on Mazzy's channel on Saturday. But I definitely want to say something about Minneapolis and talk about it and kind of have a little tribute to a city that I absolutely love, Minneapolis, Minnesota. God, Help them. Help them. Be part of the resistance on that one. It should not be happening there. It should not be happening anywhere. Thanks, everyone.